Welcome to the Daily Loot, your go-to source for all things gaming. Whether you're a casual gamer or a die-hard fan, we've got you covered with the latest news, reviews, and analysis from the gaming world. So sit back, grab your controller, and get ready for a daily dose of gaming goodness. This is the Daily Loot, and we are glad you're here.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Loot. Today, this special episode 5, we have some exciting things to talk about, because just one weekend ago, me and some cool people, we had the chance to play Corepunk, which is a new MMORPG coming, hopefully this year. And because we were some of the selected people to actually play the game, only 21 people got selected to play the game. Because of that, I've invited 2 of them who actually played also the playtest with me. And the first person I'm going to introduce is Alumio, but Alumio is a person, if you are in the Discord of Corepunk, you know who he is. Because I don't think I have to say a word about him, because you know who he is. But Alumio, thank you for joining me, and hello Alumio.
Hello. Happy to be here once again.
And also, he's a Discord moderator, so just saying. And also, our second guest we have is Blackout. Welcome, Blackout.
Hello, it's good to be here.
And Blackout is also a gaming content creator, but also he's doing magnificent videos in Blender, which is cool. So you should check him out if you have any chance by that. Link in description. Wink, wink. Guys, we are here together today because we are here to talk about Corepunk. And so everyone out there watching, listening, whatever you're doing right now, 21 people got invited last weekend to play Corepunk, and us 3 here, we were some of those 21 people. So, Alumio and I was about to call it Corepunk Blackout. Alumio and Blackout. The first thing, when we log into this beta, no, Eugene, he's going to be mad if I call it a beta. The first thing about this playtest is, of course, the character creation. And Alumio, I want to hear from you. Which class did you pick as your first class when you created a character?
Well, the first thing about it is that we really only had 3, I think they call that weapon masteries, like subclasses available to pick. So we really only had the legionary, which is the orc with the spear and the shield. We got destroyer, which is the typical human with a 2-hand sword, and we had the blast medic, which is the more original of the 3, which is basically just a skinny human with a grenade launcher. And that happened to be the one that I went with for this playtest for most of the time.
And did you pick it because it's the only ranged one we had, or because you actually want to be a support?
Basically because it was the only ranged one we had. I usually play artillery mages, something like that, like long range damage dealers.
So if the legionary actually had its ranged spec, you would have picked that one?
Yeah, I would have gone commando for sure.
Commando, yeah, that was it. So, Blackout, which one did you pick first?
Oh, Legionary, definitely. It's the one that's been on my radar. It's a coin toss between Paladin and Warmonger, so it was a no-brainer. I don't think that I could have gone the other 2 classes. Maybe Blast Medic, perhaps, but I can't do melee warriors. They're just so boring. It's not for me. So it wasn't a difficult choice.
All right, and then it comes up to me. So I picked, as Blackout said, the boring melee warrior. I went with Destroyer, but that's because I love 2-hand weapons, so that was the only class that we could pick with a 2-hand weapon, so that was, of course, the one I picked. Secondly, Alumio, what do you think about the character creation in the game compared to other MMOs? Because before you say something, so everyone knows out there, when you enter the game, the first thing, of course, you have, like in other MMOs, is you need to go through the character creation, you need to pick your class and stuff like that, just so you get the feeling. But Alumio, what would you say about the character creation? Do you feel like it misses something? Is it cool? Tell me.
Honestly, it just serves its purpose. It is, you pick your class, your class has a race tied to it. You do some very minimal customization, like around your head, the head of the model. Not really dimensions or anything like that, just different presets of hair, facial hair, etc., and several sets of colors. But honestly, for an isometric game, it just serves its purpose, and it's well done. It looks good. The models that are displayed in there with like their late game armors and all that, they look good. They even get because there's so many subclasses, we even get like, previews of their skills. So you, when you pick something, you have the description of all their skills in there, plus their special skill. So if you hover your mouse over each of them, it will show you a little GIF with the more detailed explanation of the skill. The only thing that stands out of those in a lesser way is that their passive, their special skill is just written in plain text. So if you don't really read it properly, then you just miss out completely on that existence of that extra skill. That's basically it. But it serves its purpose. It's just a basic character creation.
Is there like anything you would like to see getting added into it?
Not really. I think it serves what it is. It's to serve. I know there's a lot of people that are going to be not as happy with the fact that you can't customize your character that much, but I don't think the point of this game has ever been about messing much with the model of your character and more about once you're in the game, you mess with it through skins and armors, cosmetics and all that.
Yeah. And before we get Blackout into the conversation, I think also like in Diablo 4, what's the point of changing how your eyes or face look like when, as you're saying, it's a game where you're seeing up from above. It's no one is ever going to see it except from the character creation screen. So, Blackout, let us hear. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, in games like this, it's not really necessary. There was like a ton of different faces that you could choose. Well, not a ton, but different faces to choose. But even when you zoom in, you can't really see them anyway. So it's only like for the benefit of the loading screen. Like the most prominent things that you'll see is the skin tone and the hair. And I went for like really big hair, like the biggest hair I could find. But then as soon as I got into a game, I found a hat and put that on, and then that customization was immediately gone and replaced by in-game cosmetics. So yeah, it's nice, but it's not really useful in the game in any way. Just it'll give like a sort of a hue difference between different people playing the same character. But yeah, that's pretty much long and short of it from my point of view.
Well, but regarding the character creation, like, do you feel like it's an okay character creation overall, or do you miss anything on in there?
No, he doesn't need anything extra. I think, like I say, there's no need for that level of customization in the first place. So I don't even think that's necessary, quite frankly. As Alumio has already alluded to, the you can get preview of the skills when you create the character with actual animations showing you what the skill looks like, so you can really get a feel for the character you're going to play. You don't really need anything more than that.
Yeah. Regarding the character creation, so you saw in the character creation, which I thought was a bit funny. When you create the character, you have to pick, of course, the class. The class is depending on the race, so everyone knows you don't pick like a human race and then you pick the class. No, in this game, you actually pick like a hero, like a champion, like in League of Legends, Dota. This champion comes with its class sets, and each class has 3 different specs. So what I thought was a bit funny was when you pick this champion, and you know, not the champion hero, but you know, just any hero, you actually in the character creation have to pick the talent tree. Because in other MMOs, you first create just a class, and then inside the game you pick which talent tree you want to go with. Like, would you guys think about that? That it's so different from other MMOs?
I assume by talent tree, you're talking about basically what we classify as a subclass.
Yeah, sorry, that's subclass. Yeah.
Specialization, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it fits its purpose because, in all honesty, every subclass is in itself a class of its own. Like, there's no real relation between the subclasses in any way besides whatever parent character they're attached to. For example, the class, quote unquote, called champion has destroyer, which is a two-hand sword, and then it has ranger, which is a two-hand bow, and there's no correlation at all between the two or anything like that. So it makes more sense that you pick it at the start because there's no base skills. Like, the class champion does not give you common skills that ranger and destroyer can use. So it's just basically it's a weirder way of saying just pick a class, pretty much.
It's like when you pick a race in a game and you can only choose specific classes within that race. It's very similar but more isolated. Like looking at, say, the mercenary, for instance. Although we didn't play that, we've seen the specs and the 3 weapon specializations that you can use within that class, within that hero. You've got like sniper, engineer, and berserker, and those are completely different weapon specializations, different ways of playing the game.
Yeah, okay. That's actually some valid points, because if you go to other MMOs, all the subclasses from classes share spells normally. Like, in World of Warcraft, the shaman, he has a lightning ball no matter which spec you are as the shaman. But if you play the orc here in Corepunk, you don't share any spells.
Yeah.
Valid
But it's
point.
nice that we can like switch within those different weapon specializations though. So I think it's really interesting that we can do that, and it gives you a little bit of variety.
Basically, upon character creation, you are picking a pack of 3 classes, quote unquote, and within that pack, you're just picking which one you start with first. But eventually, if you spend the time in it, supposedly you can have all 3 of those weapon specializations in one character and switch between them at an NPC or whatever it was that they intend to implement that.
This is what's making it really difficult for me to decide what path I want to take, because when you look at every hero, there's at least one of the weapon specs that I really resonate with, but then the other 2, I'm just like, not sure. So I'm just basically trying to narrow down the one which I can see myself realistically playing all 3 and enjoying. So I'm thinking maybe like the Paladin is likely to be a class I'll choose because I like all 3 of those weapon specs, but I'm not necessarily liking all 3 of those more than another hero that I've only got like 1 spec from. So it's a really difficult choice.
Have we been told how easy it will be to switch between the subclasses in the game?
You have to do a quest, I believe, right?
Yeah, basically, when they mentioned it a few times, when they mentioned it, it was the first one you pick, you're stuck with until you reach the level cap or whatever it was. It was supposed to be like max character cap to level 40 or something like that. It probably might have changed by now, but supposedly you're stuck with the first you pick. Then once you've hit level cap, whatever that cap may be, you get a quest to unlock further specializations within the class that you are. So if you started with destroyer, you get to that cap, you get a quest to unlock ranger and defender, which is the other one. Now, if it's one quest that unlocks both of those at once, or if you do the quest, you get one more, and then you have to get that one to max, do another quest, and get the third. We don't really know. So we'll have to see how it is. But with the caveat that, yes, you unlock a new specialization within your class, but you have to level it up from the start because it's going to be at the basic level.
Fair enough. All right, so I'm sure we have some listeners now who are excited to hear about what actually it feels like going into the game. So once you create your character, you of course log into the game, and to just set down the scene, when you logged in the game, you're starting in a zone. Remember, this is a playtest. It could be very different from the final game that we're actually going to get. But in this playtest here, everyone was starting at the same little platform where a robot was awaiting you with your first quest.
That was like the destination of like a teleportation thing, like a portal, right? Where we all landed from a different universe or a different place in the universe, right?
Yeah, just like Palia. Now saying it, we got summoned to this place.
Now, it is good to say that we pretty much created a character, we hit log into the world, and we literally spawned there, so there was no cutscene, no nothing. This doesn't mean that there won't be one when the actual game is out there, but it was sort of an abrupt spawn right from clicking "Hey, create your character."
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I like to get thrown into the game. I don't really necessarily need cutscenes. Just want to, get your teeth stuck into it.
Well, I could imagine in the future some kind of cinematic explaining why the Legionary got summoned and, maybe this background story and so on. But as the first thing when you go into the game, you started there. I kind of want to hear Alumio and Blackout, don't go too far into the game. Stay like in the first 10 minutes. Blackout, how did the game feel like for the first 10 minutes when you got in?
Oh, it was everything that I'd hoped for. Just like seeing the visuals, seeing the trees, being confronted with this guy called Zik, who stood there in this giant mech, who hands out your very, very first quest. And listening to the voice lines, I was so happy to see that everything was voice acted, and then having those kind of quest summaries that were voice acted as well. That
pausing you there. The voice, was that actually actors or was that AI generated?
I don't know. Someone said it was AI, but I'm not good at detecting that.
Basically, some of them they came out like fine. You could pass them out as people, as actual VAs. Others, they were like further into the game, into the playtest, were very obvious, like AI ones. Now, this doesn't mean that all of them are AIs, or that they aren't actual VAs touched up with some AI stuff. But there's potential for at least a mix of both, because two of the central NPCs in the little town, they were very clearly AI voiced, or at least heavily touched up with AI. Like not trying to jump too far ahead, but like Big Mama, for example, she was a very stereotypical female AI voice, and the little the hobo outside her little stall was also quite of a deep male voice, but was without much emotion. You could sort of feel something off on it. Those were the two things that gave it away more for me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all of them were AI, though.
Okay, Blackout, do you think like they would use something like description, where they train the AI and then kind of use the same voice actor over and over?
I don't know. I mean, I'd love to like learn whether it was AI or not. I think it's a marvelous technology, and if they can take advantage of it and make it sound natural, and fit in with the stylized universe and the stylized voice. I mean, yeah, if they can do it, then that'd be absolutely fantastic. It'd open up a lot of accessibility for people.
Yeah,
people who don't like to read, people who can't read too well. Just having those voice lines in there, just auto-generated, it'll save like a lot of work, and they'll be able to, I guess, focus on the actual content element, the story writing.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. I'm gonna press the resume button on your stomach, just in the middle of your stomach. I'm gonna say resume, and you were talking about voice acting. Sorry, Blackout. I just wanted to just quickly talk about that one.
Oh, I mean, I have completely lost what I was saying. Then you can't distract me. That's it. That thought's gone.
But basically, again, so first impression, we talked about, you You said the trees was nice, the voice actors was cool. Blackout, what's the controls on how you play your character? Because I mean, that's the first thing you do when you log in. You try control your character. Did that feel okay for you?
Yeah. It's anyone who's played League of Legends would be very familiar with that kind of style movement. It's very, very similar. So it's not WASD. A lot of people seem to want WASD. Don't know why. I can't understand it myself. But yeah, it just felt natural. Just moving around. The pathing was fine. I didn't find any issues with kind of going places where I didn't want to go, with the exception of maybe sometimes when I was trying to jump over a fence, it'd try and path around it. But that was more how I was inputting into the game with spam clicks rather than just clicking and holding. So yeah, it did feel really good.
All right, Alumio. I think everyone is excited also to hear about your first 10 minutes.
Well, my first 10 minutes were probably not that very interesting because as soon as I got in, I went into settings. And I was just looking through the settings and seeing the things. Well, on that avenue, though, well, UI customization, there wasn't much of it. The only thing you could really do to your different UI objects were just opacity. You had like 5 or 6 levels to the opacity of 7 or 8 UI elements, but I really did not really touch much on those because found them a bit irrelevant for my own tastes. Looked around there's a lot of gameplay settings of seeing characters' names and character like damage and pet names apparently as well. Those are in the options, so one could assume pets would be something. Now, how frequent or not, I don't know. There was the good old settings that you'd see in pretty much a lot of MOBAs. So smart casting, you could turn it on and off. Now, it was a global smart cast, so it wasn't like League of Legends where you can specify if a certain key is smart cast or not. It's just an on or off for everything. There was 3 settings to attack move. So for those that don't know what attack move is, it's usually a setting on MOBAs where you press a keybind, whatever keybind you have assigned to it, and your character usually attacks. If it's in range to attack something, it attacks it right away. If it's not in range, it moves in the direction where you clicked the attack move until it can attack something. So it's sort of a way that people play of they just click on the ground and that the game will sort itself out and attack whatever's closest. So you don't actually have to move your mouse and right click on top of whatever you want to attack. But yeah, those settings were there. You had attack move closest to you, enemy, and you had attack move closest to cursor, and you had the force. It was called forced movement or something, which is, I assume, if you're not in range, move until you're in range to attack something. But I was playing around with those settings, and then one of the other playtesters came running back to spawn with 2 level, 1 level 8 and 1 level 9 mob, like after him. So basically, my first experience in the actual game was at level 1 with 2 other people fighting a level 8 and a level 9 mob. We managed to do it because luckily they were both melees, so you could just kite around them and sort them out. But that did leave me starting the game at no health and no mana. And for those that don't really know already, the playtest itself had 0 natural health regen and natural mana regen. So whatever you took, whatever loss of mana or health you took was permanent until you consumed something.
And a comment to your attack move, for people who have played Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, Command and Conquer, Red Alert, all those games, you also know what attack move is. You basically, for those games, you pressed A and then left click somewhere and you would attack move that way. Because I know Alumio, he said it, League of Legends, Dota, but I think even more people out there that's been playing all those good old school Warcraft and Command and Conquer games.
Surprisingly, I usually in League of Legends, in the MOBAs that I've played, I never use attack move. But in this one, I ended up using it over right clicking, because the attack speed at the start was quite low. So my muscle memory, while it was fine with everything else, like Blackout said, the movement and all that was fine. Even getting used to the jumping was fine. The attack speed was a bit lower than what I was used to. So I was kind of finding myself doing an attack, kiting away, and then going to start another one off of muscle memory, and it was still too soon, basically. So I just started using the attack move because it made it a bit easier.
Kind of had to use the attack move, really. Like, due to the lack of any resource regen, you needed to avoid hits like no one's business. So the only way you're going to do that is like attack move and then get straight out there as soon as that attack starts. Otherwise, you were dead and spending hours trying to regen that health.
So what was your 10 minutes experience, Dvalin?
It's funny you started with saying options, because that was also the first thing I went into. I straight up clicked escape and went into options and see, I always like, because in many MMOs you miss out on stuff if you don't do it. And I felt it's kind of the same here, because quite a lot of the settings that was disabled was like, why is this off? Why is damage numbers off? Why is this nameplate off? So a lot of them I felt like should have been on default, but I just went in, checkmarked everything, turned everything on, and went into the game. And I have to admit, for my first 10 minutes, I was really surprised at how the gameplay felt. I haven't played an MMO where I felt like... So I don't know, like, both of you, did you play Warcraft 3?
Briefly. Not a lot. I was more of a StarCraft player.
Briefly on Warcraft 3, but I played like Dawn of War more.
Okay, so basically, you both have the RTS feeling from StarCraft, Dawn of War, and so on. And in those games when you got that special unit, the hero unit, that kind of felt like Corepunk. It felt like that RTS game where you played that hero. And I don't I don't hate it. I love it, because I love the controls in those RTS games, and having an MMO now that feels like those RTS games with your hero as your only character you have to control, it feels perfect. So I was very surprised, because we are so used to games like Path of Exile and Diablo, where it's all about clicking 1 million times with your mouse to do attacks. But here you can freaking right click on an enemy and it just attacks for you. I could go down and make dinner for my kids and come up again, and then I'll still be attacked the same unit, maybe. You know what I mean. But yeah, so I like the way you run around and attack. I do.
It feels good. It's not... If you're used to RTSs, if you're used to MOBAs, it is like maybe not the same quality wise, but it is up there with the feel good of it.
Yeah. So let's see, first impression again. Okay. So after the first 10 minutes, we've started to getting a few quests. We started to like walk around. We try combat. We find the first city, and one thing. So I want to talk about two things here. First thing is, a lot of these quests that we're picking up is hidden quests. You basically had to speak with every single NPC you meet on the street to make sure that this NPC doesn't have a quest. Because in other MMOs, they normally have like a quest marker above the head. But in this game here, I had to speak with every NPC I met on the street to make sure that they didn't have like a quest for me. How would you guys think about that?
I think like I like the way that it makes it feel a little bit more immersive, but there definitely needs to be a little bit of education to the fact that they're there in the first place. And I think there needs to be some kind of clue, like where you've spoken to people previously, like if you've spoken to a quest giver, you've gone off and done the quest. It's kind of like easy to forget who they were and where you met them originally. Now I don't know how that's going to play out in, if they kept it exactly like that, it might be one of them things where you just kind of like gather a load of quests and over time you complete them. I think a lot of people are used to kind of systems like World of Warcraft where you have like lists of quests that you grind in order to the point where you've got like add-ons that min-max the game for you, so you can just follow a line, go to do a quest, tick it off, don't even read the dialogue, blah blah blah. And I'm kind of hoping that this isn't like that, where the quests do have value, but you don't need to grind them in order, like a checklist, like a box ticking exercise. I want to be able to maybe find that NPC, like 5 months in the future. I think there you are. I've been looking you for 5 months. Here's that whiskey or whatever it is that you wanted. And that'd be super cool. As long as there isn't that kind of requirement for you to, like complete those quests in order to progress fast, which is the case in a lot of games. But at the end of the day, whatever way you do it, there's going to be content creation explaining where things are. So I guess it kind of defeats the object of that. So maybe put it in the first place. But it's definitely immersive.
It is, from my take on it, and this is basically what I'm going to say, is going to be mixed in with some of what I gave as feedback, what I thought they should address in term for this questing system. Overall, I liked it. It does feel different to what everyone is used to, at least from modern MMOs. You'll have people say that, oh, this was done a lot back in the day and all that, but in terms of what is actually out there on the market, it is, at the moment, it is refreshing a bit. But I don't know if this is if this was their current version of it or not. It does need some adjustments to be able to be used properly. So when you spawn in, you started with a main quest already, and you started next to the NPC you needed to talk to for that main quest, and you talk to him, and you have a special indicator for that main quest, sort of like a delivery thing or something in the dialogue options. And that's the first thing they teach you when you started the playtest, was that icon when you talk to NPCs, at least for main quests. Now, if you start moving up north where the next part of the quest tells you to go, which is up north to the village, very briefly after you start walking, you come across a little side NPC, like a little astronaut that's further up the road. And I think that is where they are trying to onboard you into this hidden quest system, because if you talk to him, you won't have a special quest icon on the dialogue options. You will have a new one, which is ask for help, which does not stand out at all from who are you, what is this place, and all that. Now, if you start asking him if he needs help, he will give you a quest, and that's how, at least it came across to me, how they want to try and teach you without just outright saying that, oh, talk to people because they might have stuff for you. A few things on that is, I think that NPC should have been further, like, closer to where you actually spawn, because you don't immediately see him on the screen. You actually have to start exploring out a bit, and then you come across him. But you're not locked to that path, so you could just miss him outright, and then you go and get to the town, and maybe you talk to some NPCs in town, and then you find out. But still, regardless, there were people in the test that, even though they got to the town, even though they did all that, they talked to some NPCs, they didn't actually register that you could ask them if they needed help and get quests. Something I gave from the feedback is that they should just get rid of that ask for help thing and just put a like they did for the very first NPC, just put a silver question mark, like for a side quest indicator or something in the dialogue options. Just that it's still hidden. You still have to talk to the NPC to see if they has a quest for you, but at least it stands out outright, and it's something that you pick up on. Because
Yeah.
even after, because like Blackout said, you get a bunch of quests, you go and complete them, and then you're like, oh, the quest descriptions are not really tightened up. So some of them are fine. Others you kind of they don't tell you exactly where you need, like what direction you need to go, or where do you go to. There was one about pulling weeds that I accepted, for example, and it told me to go pull some red weeds, and I moved forward and I lost where the NPC was that gave me the quest, and I kind of just lost track of where the hell was I meant to go to pull these weeds, and the quest didn't tell me that. In the same fashion, completing a quest and you go deliver it to the NPC, you don't really know where he is unless you remember exactly where you picked up that quest from. So there's a lot of tightening that needs to be done to allow this system to be actually enjoyable and not just outright frustrating in a lot of scenarios. In the same fashion, you finish a quest for someone and you still have the option of asking them if they need your help, which you do that and they just say, oh no, I don't need help anymore. So it's like Blackout said, you can't really track if you've done stuff for this NPC or not. Like, are you done? Like, if you come back through and see this NPC a week from now, like, oh, you have to talk to him again and see, just double check if does he need help or not, because you don't really know.
Yeah, I completely agree that I think they need to change that ask for help thing, because I remember my first experience with that. I was going through all the different options. I was speaking to them. Who are you? What is this place? Blah blah blah. I got to the ask for help thing, and I didn't click on it because I thought that was like I played a lot of Guild Wars, and you can ask for directions to particular NPCs in, to I want to find where the bank is, for example, and they'll pop a marker on the map, and I kind of associated that ask for help thing or the need help with that kind of mechanic. So I thought it was like me asking them for help rather than me asking them if they need help. So I just completely skipped it. Didn't click on it. Cause I thought, no, I'll discover the world myself without getting a marker to it, because that was my first assumption. So that was kind of the thought process I had. But I think I'm really struggling to sort of overly criticize this playtest, just simply because it seems like they've got this game and they've taken a cookie cutter and they've stamped out this environment for us to have a run around on. And I kind of feel like there's a lot of things that are not there that should be there, that we shouldn't be like criticizing just because they haven't added it yet. It's on the to-do list. Like when we meet that astronaut on the first road, they could just simply put in like one of the tooltips that they put in when you reach that house where you have to pick up that journal. That's a system they have in the game already, which they could quite easily trigger as soon as you hit that astronaut or the first NPC, just to
Very
explain
much
to you,
so.
this is the tip for this scenario, and then that's it, problem solved. And they probably do have that coming in the game. So I don't want to say like this needs changing because we don't know what the game is going to even look like. This is how we move, this is how you interact, kind of thing. I didn't take a lot away from the game as if to say this is what the game's going to play like in release. It was just like I kind of felt like it was a feel for it, so there's that reluctance there from me to criticize it.
And I guess it's sort of worth it to me to preface my like statements going forward that even though I took the playtest and I gave feedback on what was there, because that is sort of what I experienced, so that's what I'm going to give feedback on. A lot of what I've considered and what I gave feedback on are things that I think they're not really big changes that to do, or like you mentioned, they have systems already in place that they can tweak and add stuff to basically solve that issue that I
Yeah, exactly.
raised.
Like the first quest line that you get, you go into the town, you speak to a guy, and he says, "Go find this other fella," which you can't do because he's inaccessible. For all we know, that the completion of that quest line could give you an item which gives you that regeneration that you needed, but because we couldn't access it, then that entire element of the game was inaccessible to us. And if we're taking it on face value, we could be saying, well, there's not enough regen in the game, but it's not a problem because when you look at the bigger picture, that could just be easily solved on level up, for example, when you get to level 6 or whatever the level is. There's so much missing, but you need to say it, don't you, in case it hasn't been addressed. I'm just
Very much so.
I don't want people that are listening to this think, oh, well, it's a crap game because they don't even have this particular feature in it. I don't want to put people off on a game that is. I mean, I marked it 10 out of 10. I loved it. I could probably see this being my forever game, as long as they don't monumentally screw up. But I do think it's got a lot of potential and a lot of promise.
As a person like me who are very much used to play MMOs where you have like a pointer exactly pointing you anywhere you have to go, it was a very, very different experience for me that like now I actually have to speak with people because I'm used to only speak with people that had like a quest mark on the head. Every other NPC in normal games, like for me, is like you don't even exist in my world because I don't care about them. But it was it was very refreshing that I had to speak with them all and get the background story. I was kind of forced to it, and it was nice. But I agree with what you're saying, Alumio. Like if the quest basically told you, it doesn't need quest markers, but if it just told you go to Rancher's farm, go to Mama's house, and on the map it would even also say this is the area, it's called this. It would help a lot. It needs small names on areas because, and I should say, it basically said just kill the rats on my farm. Where are you, farm? It's like, we just need like small clues. And then I agree with what you're saying, Blackout. Like finding that NPC after 5 months. I mean, okay, if I found out after 5 months, I would be a bit pissed. But I get what you're saying. Like it's fun with all these. You have to like. It's kind of like an adventure. It's nice, but I totally agree with you that it needs some fine tuning. And again, just so everyone knows, this playtest, as Blackout was saying, it feels like they have taken an entire map. Did you say cookie cutter?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're basically taking a cookie cutter and just stamped a random place on the map. And if you try to move outside of that map, you got killed by poison.
Yeah, we tried it. We tried it en masse. It was like a mass suicide at one point. Did you run in that, Alumio, where we all charged to the radiation zone?
I think I was on that one. I think I was running around killing rats or something.
Yeah, it seemed like there was about, and it felt like there was 100 of us. I know there wasn't that many people on the server, but we all kind of like ran towards the radiation zone in the hope of finding this NPC, this what was his name? Zekos? I can't remember.
Zog's brother.
Zog. Yeah,
Zog.
that's him. And we were like, we just all charging into it, and we were going to say like, well, can we get through the radiation? And then it was like it started ticking, it getting more and more. Like the Geiger counter ticks were getting more and more intense. And then because I had the most health at the time, I was in the lead, and it was just like. I started taking damage. I was like, oh god no, retreat. But it's not a case of like one step in, you start taking damage, one step back, you stop taking damage. It's like one step in, you take that damage, and then 400 steps back, you stop taking that damage. Yeah. And so we lost about 90% of people to the radiation at that point. It was hilarious.
And to add on to this, I have a feeling that yes, while they basically cookie cuttered around like a circle on the little town, that I see them basically using these radioactivity wall sort of as a map limiter when the actual game is out. Because I did wonder, supposedly the world is super massive according to them, and you could spend hours on them running around. But I always wondered how they would handle the like edges of it, because at some point you have to hit an edge, or either they have a massive blockade around the whole of the map, or how it seems that they'll probably do is just they have this insta kill wall thing.
Yeah. I don't think the radiation was there just to prevent you from leaving the area, because there was one point where I died and I said to myself, I'm going to explore the radiation zone as a ghost just to see how far it went, because you could do that. You could enter the radiation zone and it was giving you like the full kind of damage sound effect, so you knew you were like in deep, and obviously it wasn't killing you because you were a ghost. But they actually do limit the where you can actually physically click to move, so you can move freely within the radiation zone. But then you've got like the trees become so dense you can't physically pass through them, and it just gives you like a like a no entry sign on the when you try and like click to move to a location. So I don't know why they've put that like two things in, whether it's like a temporary thing for the test just to say, well, you can't go any further and we don't want you to see the hard boundary or something, or I don't know. But it's not actually necessary for the thing, because it was a nice pleasant boundary anyway. You know, there was nothing that you could think, oh well, I can just see the grey background of game, you know, the game engine or whatever.
Another thing I want to talk about with the questing and just like drop it again, it's very important that we say out so everyone knows this playtest was basically to make us all know how the game felt like. The small things we talk about where they maybe have to change it, of course it's going to get changed, you know, the bad things. It was a playtest. Don't take all these things like, you know, oh my god, this, as Blackout and Alumio said. Because what I'm going to talk about next is, since we're talking about quests right now, I guess you both had also this issue with questing that the drop rates from quests was horrible.
Yeah, we kind of questioned at one point whether it was bugged or not, and this kind of also ties in to what Alumio was saying about not knowing where we were on the map and where we needed to be, because we established that at least one quest you need to be in a specific location to get those things, and these mobs spawned all over the place, or at least we think they're the mobs, because there was a little bit of an inconsistency between what we were asked in the quest and the mobs we were seeing. I think it was something like a mammoth boar, and we would find boar mammoth. So
Yeah, it was
I
one
know
of the other.
it's only a small inconsistency, but for all we know, it's we were hunting the wrong mob. So, but I don't think anyone found any of the hide that we were trying to, or whatever it was, the meat. No, it was the gonads, wasn't it?
Gonads. Yeah.
Gonads. Which I thought was quite amusing. But that brings on to another kind of point when the quest line. There are some very interesting dialogue voice lines for some of the quests that I noticed, without like spoiling it for anyone, because I'm sure this quest will stay in the quest with the water pipes where you had to help that guy in the field. Do you remember that one, Alumio?
Yeah, as the golden showers thing, wasn't it? Was that one?
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, the actual collection quests. There was one to get rat stuff, and I think I managed to find one the whole thing.
That one, surprisingly, I was also struck. It was killing rats in the wheat fields, which
Yeah.
it wasn't a specific zone, but basically every place around the little town was a wheat field. So I struggled at the start, but after we basically separated, because originally me and Blackout were in the same party, then I separated to try and do a little bit of solo play. I went to a random place where in the wheat fields I had level 1 and 2 rats, and I started killing 2 or 3 groups there, and I quickly got the 2 further I needed. Now I don't know if this was just again a location thing.
It
It
wasn't,
didn't
because
seem
sorry to
like it.
interrupt you there. You got your first one, and about 10 seconds later, I got my first one, and we were at completely different ends of the map. You were like the north fields, and I was in the south fields. So I think it might have been like a server issue more than anything else, because
Maybe.
people were complaining of not getting these all day, and then both you and I get one within 10 seconds of each other.
Basically, I think from at the time when we checked with some other people if they had gotten any hides, I think they're like, what, over 10 people in like the little voice channels that we were using to playtest, and I think only one person had one hide so far. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, they may have messed with the server settings or something. But once I started doing it solo, and this doesn't necessarily mean that it's because I was solo or not, but the little area I did, I quickly got the 2 hides in 2 or 3 packs. So I'm not really sure. Basically, with the overall drop chance of things, I think you'd honestly be okay. The only main issue that was getting in the way of just going through more and more mobs easily were the regeneration, like the lack of natural regeneration.
Oh
So
yeah.
you'd have to spend a good amount of time going around grabbing food from the floor and trying to get wood for campfires and such, which I think we'll come back to this topic, I assume, very
Yeah, yeah,
soon.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and just to finish this red quest, I tried it for more than 1 hour and I never got one of the hides, so there must definitely have been something up with the servers, which of course will probably get fixed, for the next playtest. Because I think we all probably mentioned it in the feedback we gave back to the developers. And so everyone knows, once we finished this playtest, we all gave them feedback, so they basically got 21 forms back with plenty of feedback. And I'm sure Lumio's feedback was probably the longest one. Who knows? Okay, yeah, so questing. I think we touched enough on questing. We should go, because I know a lot of people have been asking me in DMs about crafting and gathering. And I honestly cannot talk much about this because crafting and gathering have never really been like a thing for me. I tried to cut it down few trees. So I think it's more a topic for you guys because I know you two are more into crafting. So how was crafting? We're gonna start this time. We're gonna start with Alumio. Alumio, how was crafting in the game?
Yeah. So first things first with the crafting and gathering thing, we did not have access to the 4 like main specific crafting professions that they explained with their video about professions. So we could do the 4 gathering ones. We could do one that is basically a generic cooking one. It's like a cooking crafting profession, but it does not necessarily mean that you're actually just cooking things. For example, when you make campfires, you would make them in that profession, which I guess it makes sense because you're making campfire to cook stuff, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just recipes for food. On this, gathering is pretty straightforward. It feels fine. Some people could say it feels too slow, but I think it sort of fits the bill. The time is, I think, will probably stay the same. And you just, as you level up the gathering professions, you probably just get more out of a node. So instead of we're all level up with the first level, we'd all just get one item out of it, one material out of whatever we were gathering. But you've seen from videos and they've shared that sometimes you get like 3 things in there. I assume that's probably something that will start taking effect as you level up the gathering professions. You get more out of a node. But yeah, in my opinion, that felt fine. Felt satisfying. I kept gathering everything I came across, either through interactables or through actual gathering professions. And I guess before I start going into the actual cooking profession and what that entailed, I would just see if Blackout had anything to say on these gathering ones.
Honestly, I don't think there was too much to say on it at this stage because we couldn't really do a lot. We spent the majority of the time looking for 2 types of wood so we could make campfires so we could cook our food scraps, and that was pretty much the long and short of it. And from what I understand is that the gathering was bugged in the statistical sense. So we had people with like minus, I think I had like minus 190% on my mining. So I don't really think it's fair to kind of review the gathering and crafting too much just because of the limitations.
And this statistical bug, or we think was a bug, for all we know, for some reason it actually works like this, but I doubt it. it's about the efficiency of the profession, which supposedly it's like if you have more efficiency, you get better results when you gather stuff on that profession. But the gathering profession that you've used the least, as in like the one, it's a weird way to name it, the oldest one that you haven't used, or the oldest one you've used gets lowered. But yeah, we assume it was bugged because we assume that once it's at 0, it just goes to the next oldest one and lowers that instead. But for all we know, it can go into the negatives, but I doubt it. In the same fashion, I had 2 gathering professions at 100% efficiency and 1 at minus 135, which doesn't really seem like it fits what they actually wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
But I guess, do you have anything to say about the gathering ones, Dvalin? I know you don't really do
Well,
much professions, but you actually had to be gathering some stuff on this one.
yeah. I mean, it was actually relaxing to cut down trees. Running around in the forest and finding these blue shiny trees was actually good. The only thing again comes back to the drop rate of those items I needed. For making those campfires, you needed those. I can't remember the name. Was it kind of what was it called again?
It's just wood. You just needed wood
Wood.
for the
Yeah.
campfires.
I kept getting other materials from the trees, but not the ones I needed. But in the end, Tasmadai, he came over to me and was like, "Hey, I got the tree for you," and he gave me it, so I finished the quest. But again, I feel like the drop rate was low on many things in this playtest, which probably will get addressed. But if it felt good, it feels like a game I could maybe consider starting doing crafting in. So that's good because in other MMOs I would never touch crafting, but in this game it seems like something that could be fun. And for the people out there, as Alumio also just touched on, you cannot be a perfect expert in all the different craftings on the same character. Like in New World, in New World you could basically do all the craftings 100%, get level up, and have them in the best way, all the different professions. But in this game here, they kind of want to try to have your character focused on some of them, because as Alumio said, if you just cut down trees, you destroy stones, and then you start cutting down trees again, the latest one you used is gonna go down. And it's not what did you call it? It's not level.
It's the
Yeah.
efficiency of it, and it's not the latest one you've used. It's the like the
The
it's the
opposite?
other end of it. Yeah, it's the opposite of it. It's the one that you've used further back in time. Like,
Ah.
but I don't really know how to word it. It's a bit weird, but it's
Yeah.
not the previous one you used. It's the
The
one further
oldest.
back, the oldest one that you haven't used.
And do you know, is it only for the gathering, or is it also for the one where you actually craft stuff?
It actually affects the crafting professions as well. They also have efficiency, which work in the same way.
Okay. And we do have 4 crafting and 4 gathering, right?
Yeah,
Yes, but then you also
and
have side
cooking.
stuff. Yeah,
So
Yeah,
so
the
you have like
cooking's a separate one. So you got
uh,
4 gathering, 4 crafting, and cooking as a separate one, I believe.
eventually, at least they've said, confirmed in the past, you're gonna have fishing as well, which
Mm,
uh, recently was asked, and they said it was in a prototype stage. That's
yeah,
why it wasn't in the beta yet,
yeah, it wasn't
and
on the UI or anything that I could see.
potentially some social uh, type professions like sheriff
oh yeah.
and that type
Mm,
of thing. But we'll see
yeah,
if that actually makes it to the game or not. But onwards into the actual cooking one, that one, because we've mentioned already that you didn't on this playtest. This doesn't mean that it will actually be like this, especially because in a lot of all of the footage and gifs they've shared, the characters have a base like natural health regeneration and mana regeneration, which we did not have in the playtest. So anything that you've lost, health or mana, would be permanent until you consumed something. Now, I kind of understood after a bit a while and like looking through what the vendors were selling and what you could do. I kind of understood the cycle that they're aiming for you to do, like in the core of the game, which is go questing, go fighting things, after a certain time, you're gonna stop, and you're gonna do a period of gathering some things, or you're gonna be gathering as you go either way. But if you don't have enough, then you're gonna stop and you're gonna gather some more and get yourself healthy again, either by making campfires that you put down that anyone can use. Now they last a limited amount of time. They were a very low regeneration, which is basically just 30 health and 30 mana, which was the total of its 30-second duration. So one health and one mana a second. Everyone could use, but comparison to what your max health and your max mana was nothing. The benefit of campfires was that it doubled the effect of food that you ate, and food was the main way, one of the main ways that you would get health and mana back. You had raw ingredients, so like eggplants, carrots, onions, spread around everywhere as interactables in the world. So food bags that you could shoot, and then they might give you a carrot or they might give you nothing. Pumpkins, like actual pumpkins and watermelons on the floor that you can't shoot, but you can step on it and it breaks. And sometimes it gives you some seeds or it gives you some actual bits of watermelon or pumpkin. So the system of showering the player with basic raw food ingredients is there, because you could very easily accumulate these raw ingredients. Their actual effect was pretty crappy because, well, they're raw ingredients, they're not cooked into something. All of them were like, give you 1 mana a second for 10 seconds, give you 1 HP a second for 10 seconds, all in that realm. Which was the main struggle for us in the playtest, of trying to understand this loop and the fact of you had to chug through dozens and dozens of these raw ingredients to get your health and your mana back, which was a time investment that wasn't really worth it for how much actual fighting you got to do. And now you had recipes, better recipes that you could get from traders. Not, you had like 6 of them on a trader. 4 of them you couldn't really do because you didn't have a professional level high enough for it. It was like you have beginner cook, then you have journeyman and whatever else. But you could get 1 or 2, which after you made that better food, it would give you 12 HP a second for like 10, 15 seconds, which again by itself is not anything great, but you combine that with a campfire, it doubles that, and that's already like pretty significant right off the bat. So there is that cycle in there that they intend you to do, and the issue with it is that it's not fully explained to you, it's not properly explained to you. You kind of pick up on it on references and from playing around and looking at vendors. Some people completely did not realize this, which is fine because it was not fully indicated to you. But it is their situation to deal with this if you actually don't have any normal regeneration. It takes some time, and it's not for everyone. You could also go the other way of spending like pretty much all of your gold that you would get from selling things and from doing quests, buying painkillers and mana vials, which were the effectively same thing as potions in a normal game, although with a higher cooldown. So you could use them in fights as well, which was good, but they had high cooldown, like 3-minute cooldown between each usage. And they were in some 2 NPCs that were in the outskirts of town, so they weren't really readily available. You had to like to find them and to discover they were selling those things. But yeah, I've been talking now for quite a while, but I kind of explained the loop here on this. If you guys want to jump in on that and what you thought of it.
Yeah, I think cooking's likely to be a really valuable skill to have, at least based on the experiences we had in the test. But yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much covered all the stuff in relation to food that we could experience. The only thing that I can add to that was there was an item that you could get which gave you it's like 100% health regeneration increase. So you could combine that with the painkillers, And I think like when you looked at the whole thing like economically, it was probably better to gather to get the green items that would sell for 15 a piece and then buy those items rather than like spending hours gathering enough to make enough fires to regenerate yourself. Because when you think about what was realistically available to us, I know that the basic food gave like a nominal amount, but then you could get the bread in an early recipe quest, and then you can get the I think it's like grilled chicken leg or grilled poultry leg or something, which was slightly more. That was realistically the two things that you could get. So when you kind of work out how much health that gives you, how long it would take you, how many fires it would take you to get like full health regen, and the length of time that it would take to gather all those ingredients, it's just simpler just to buy painkillers and this ointment that like enhances your health regen, and stick that with a fire, and you're onto a winner. So that in that sense, it definitely needs balancing a lot.
Well, actually, on this, I'm not really sure. I didn't test it myself, but did the painkillers get doubled by the fire? Because if I remember, the fire was specifically food stuff, and I don't think the painkillers were classified as food.
It was just health regeneration, so I don't know exactly. I mean, I'm thinking back a week ago, I might have misremembered stuff, but I do remember being towards the end of the game, being on maximum health by utilizing multiple sources of health regeneration.
Yeah, it basically comes back to the fact of you have a lot of means to get health. Not all of them give you like a good sizable chunk of health, but you can combine all these bits together and you can keep yourself healthy. It is just, it will be a clash for a lot of people with the fact that this isn't just your typical fight stuff and then you easily get your health back, or just hit the button to chug potions down like in Diablo or something. And this is something that you will have to consider, like how do you deal with your health and your mana that you're missing, whatever approach you want to do. But you will be doing this every single time you fight a mob camp, because they hit hard and they have auto attacks, which are basically undodgeable damage, especially if you're fighting ranged mobs. So you will be doing these considerations pretty much after every single fight, so which is really important.
As a casual player, I'm a bit afraid of this entire aspect because I mean, as we talked about before, the entire playtest, you had no regeneration. Every time you got attacked, the life you lost, it didn't go back. You didn't get any mana back. Zero regeneration, and as Alumio Blackout is talking about now, you had to eat, you had to do painkillers, you had to do campfire. I'm just afraid, like if they kept going with this, I feel like a lot of casual player, the care bears, as people call them on Corepunk Discord, I feel like we're gonna lose them. There should be some kind of just my opinion. There should be some kind of like passive regeneration, just like +1, +2, whatever. So you have to sit down for 60 seconds, read a Reddit post or watch an Asmongold video, I don't know, and then when you go back, you have full health again. I feel like that's, or at least put a permanent campfire inside cities, so you can always go back to the city and get life. What you guys think about that? Like as a cat, I know. I mean, you too. You crafting. You love crafting, so you always gonna have food. But what about people who's like more casual and don't do crafting?
I think again, it comes back to the earlier point of we don't know what the game is gonna hold for us, and has that regen just been missed out of this test? If it is exactly like it is, let's just say for a minute that it is that case, then yeah, they definitely need something 100%, because like the game, I don't want to say it was unplayable, but we had a blast while we were doing it, but it in its current form, it's not suitable for the casual player. Not a chance. They would quit after an hour, guaranteed. But I've just got this niggle that this is not anywhere near representative of the actual final product. It gives us a feel for it. It's like showing someone your holiday pictures. You know, look, this is nice, this is nice, this is nice, but you don't really kind of get the actual core of what's going on. And like, I know it's a big thing, and it kind of like slowed down the pace of the game significantly. But I think it's going to be in there. Genuinely do think it's going to be in there anyway. And that's going to change the whole, like, every single thing that we think about, every single thing that we discussed, and every single thing that we said that we need to change. I think is going to be hinged on that small fact. We're going to change the pace of how quickly we, kill rats, for example. The drop rates might have been fine, but from our perception, we only killed a few camps because we couldn't kill them faster. And so if you had that health regeneration in there, we'd potentially be able to kill them, infinitely quicker. And, it may take like half an hour to kill enough rats to get those rat hides that we needed. And yeah, so like our whole, perception of the game could be completely wrong.
Very much so. Like I generally don't think that we will be seeing no base regeneration go through. There's more than likely something happened there. Either, like you said, we didn't have the permission of getting further into the game that we needed to sort of naturally fix that as you play the game. My opinion, it probably either we were playing in an older build that had like some reason they turned it down and they couldn't change the last minute because they didn't know about it or whatever. But even if you look at, like I mentioned before, you look at all of their videos and GIFs where they show the characters, they have natural like regeneration, even if very small, with or without artifacts. So like there was one post, the one in August or something this year, where they showcase some like different builds, and there's one in there where they're showing Legionary with no items, no talent, no nothing, and even in there he has mana regeneration and health regeneration. So that will more than likely just be there for when more people actually get to play the game. And it's just the fact of all of these things that we're sort of discussing can very easily be adjusted to just find the right balance if they haven't been adjusted already, or if there's some things missing that we don't know about. But
Yeah.
overall, you kind of like play quite nicely into the loop.
And funny enough, like on the feedback form I gave them back, I had 4 points, and one was like, regeneration was missing. Second was the drop rate was low. Thirdly, it was hard to find the quests, and fourthly, it could be challenging for care bears. That was like my only concerns. But as you say, it's so small things. We're talking about the issues they have right now in my world. It's math. They just have to change the numbers behind the thing. We are not complaining about how the graphic was. We're not complaining about how the combat was or about how the movement was. The important parts of the game. We're not complaining about any important things. We're just, talking numbers, like, the drop rate, the life duration. Like, if people like take this away and look at how the game was, I mean, as Blackout said, it's a 10 out of 10. It's a perfect game in my world.
I agree.
And like just further into this, well, yeah, I agree that the game has a lot of potential. It will. I honestly speaking, I think even with the potential it has, I think it will be a niche game. It's not going to be like a out of the park like game that everyone and their mothers will want to play. It will be a niche game in my opinion. But as long as it has its legs, it can stand by itself, then I think we'll be fine. But coming back a little bit into the like regeneration issues, and like this will be addressed, it has to be addressed, because it's very plausible that depending on what class you started with, for example, let's say Destroyer, and that's the thing, if one key thing that we haven't said is that you start at level 1, you only have access to one of your first 3 skills, so Q, W, or E. You have to pick one. You don't get the whole kit from the outright. So depending on what class you pick and what starting skill you get, it's very plausible that literally the first mob group that you fight could kill you and leave you at 20% health and 20% mana. That's when you respawn into that. and that's you just starting the game, fighting the very first mob you came across, and you're already without anything in your bag, without anything, already hitting that issue with the regeneration. Like there's no way that isn't addressed either by something that's missing already, like base regeneration, whatever, or something that you quickly get to allow you to go around it.
Yeah, it's kind of like making the game even more complicated than Elden Ring. Because even in Elden Ring, you kill the first mob quite easy. I mean, Elden Ring was a hard game, but you know what I'm saying. You could kill the first mob and get life back without doing that much. So you're right. It has to be changed. It will be changed.
Yeah, I don't even think that map was the game map that we're going to play on. I think that was created for testing and showcasing purposes. Like they've said before that they've created tools to help them generate content using AI to have camps and things. And while they do prefer to do it by hand to get that extra little level of detail, for all we know, they've just done some asset drops, stuck it on the map, set the AI to generate camps around it, put in a couple of quest lines, job done, just for testing purposes. It could be entirely different experience when we come into the game. It does seem rather
Basically.
strange that we had like level 10s around the spawn location, the start location.
Honestly, my take on this is I think that type of level jump mixed in there in the areas that you're moving around. I honestly think that's how they're gonna play it out. Maybe not straight away in your spawn, whatever, but I think that's honestly how they'll play it out, where you can just wander off into some areas that actually level jump right away, and they're just like sprinkled across everywhere on the map. I find that very plausible. What I'm not sure about is the I forgot I was gonna say something, but I kind of just forgot. So I guess I'll come back to it when I remember.
No worries. So while Alumio is gonna remember that, we have now talked about getting into the game, crafting your character, well, creating your character. We have talked about how the character creation was, the first impression, the first 10 minutes of gameplay, the professions, gathering, and as one of the topics also was balancing, but I feel like we have pretty much talked about that also now, the balancing thing, how the game was balanced. We have touched about that also. So I think the only thing we really need now, because I mean we also are soon on 1.5 hour. What we probably need now is a short review from each of us. Just can you try put in some pros and cons? Don't do like the entire list of what you wrote down, but just like let's hear what did you like, what did you not like, and let's try and end it there, kinda. And also with the what Alumio needs to remember.
Is it worth talking about itemization at all? Because we did have access to artifacts that we were buying and working towards. I mean, I don't have any major thoughts about that, but we could buy a weapon, I could buy a shield, we could buy artifacts in there. We just haven't touched on it, so is that worth a conversation at all?
That's a good point, because I forgot that point because I didn't find any items in the game, so I totally forgot that.
No, your only way of acquiring them in the playtest, you couldn't craft them, you couldn't get them from quests that were in the test. You had to buy them from vendors.
I did hear
Personally,
of a drop though. Someone said they found one in a drop.
yeah, there was like 2 or 3 people that had a random like
Yeah.
lucky drop of a mana like artifact, but not really mana regen, just flat mana or something like that. But either way, I don't think there's much that we can talk here about, especially because the regen issue gets in the way of this. I think almost everyone was just buying straight up flat attack damage or artifacts because those were the only real stats that was doing any meaningful change to your character. I know 2 or 3 other people tried to get some armor ones or like some defensive things, but it was really doing nothing because at the end of the day, you're still getting hit and you're still losing health permanently unless you consume something. So it's at the state where if the game is actually like this, your start of the game might be very linear in terms of what you build item wise until you get higher levels and potentially get some more room to play with stuff. Or depending on whatever's missing that we don't know that can fix this regen issue.
And to close some gaps, if someone out there is listening to this without knowing much about this game, basically items in this game, you don't have them equipped like you do in other MMOs like World of Warcraft, where you have like a chest armor on that gives you stats. No, you run with artifacts, which reminds of the system you have in League of Legends and Dota, where, you know, in the bottom right corner, you have your small items there, which give you stats. But the only equipable item you have that actually do, well, when I say equipable item, I mean the items you actually have on your character, like looking on, is your weapon. The weapon you have on your back is actually also the one that it has stats, attack power, attack damage, and so on. In the playtest myself, I bought a new weapon. I remember, I don't know if you guys actually gave me gold. I remember some gave me gold. Mike, he gave me all his gold, so I was able to go to one of the vendors and buy a new sword for like 200 gold, I believe it was. So that was the only itemization I tried. Did you guys buy many things?
A spear, I got a shield, and I managed to acquire 4 of the same flat damage artifacts by the end of it.
Yeah.
There was it was strange though, because there was 2 shields you could buy in the store for the same price, but there was one had 15 armor and one had 20 armor, and it just seemed a bit strange that there was different values for the same price. So I guess that was just like a...
That was the same with me. I bought the two-hand sword, and then I after realized there was another two-hand sword which had so much more damage for the same price, and I was like, okay.
I think with the swords, like the main primary weapon, that you had one with less damage but higher attack speed, and then the counterpart of that, so higher damage but less attack speed. The thing with the actual shields themselves is that they only have like armor in them. That's it. So that's why it stands out as weird. But yeah, my itemization was pretty much the same thing as Blackout, like 3 or 4 of the same flat damage artifact. There wasn't really much that was worth spending the time getting the money for in that playtest.
Like, it made a difference, but not so significant that it could mitigate the problems that we faced with the regen.
All right, so do we feel like we have touched all the important topics, so we are ready to do the...
I have one very quick thing, just to bring up a sort of a awareness, because I know not everyone experienced it, but I did have some infrastructure issues, which I think probably to do with the whatever server they're holding on to, but I don't want to go hard on this or like claim it as an actual problem, because this was a small test. For all I know, they were using like a local server and not an actual proper production one. But basically, I had some instances of 2 or 3 mobs, they would freeze in an animation. Like there was one boar that was slamming the ground, for example, and he just froze standing up while it was doing the animation of slamming the ground, and he just stayed in that animation for the rest of the fight, like gliding around. I had one instance of a player I saw just gliding frozen across the floor. There was one instance with the seamless loading, because we kind of talked like, even if it was a small section of map, it was still big to walk on it. It would take some time to walk across the map on it. And the seamless loading made it feel good to your own character. But for me, there was 2 or 3 instances where you'd clearly cross a hidden loading zone, and you could see the NPCs suddenly spawning out of thin air. And I had a proper issue with this, where I got separated from my party, and Blackout was in the party with me, and they started fighting something, and I came to help them, and I could see them fighting something, but it was invisible to me. I could not interact with it, and then suddenly they appeared. But again, I don't want to jump onto this and say they clearly have big issues with is here, and the game's not playable, because even with this stuff, it was still pretty much playable, and I'm holding out to see what they actually put out there with no NDA. And this leads me to the point as well that I remembered, which was all of this was for a small test with 21 people under visual NDA, and for all we know, because we already talked about some things that might change, or we haven't seen enough of it, what they put out there on the next test that supposedly has no NDA will be a more telling experience of a definitive thing that we could expect and release, in my opinion, because they've all as a company, they've presented themselves as they really care about first impressions. And if they put what we tried out there to the public as a first impression, then either this is literally what they have, or there's no reasoning as to why they would hide whatever they have and show this version. So we'll see what we get at the end of the month, if we get it. And that will probably be a more defining tell of what the game actually is. I don't know if any of you experienced any issues with the loadings and the like.
I know what you're, I know what you're experiencing there. Like, I think the most significant thing, because I believe I was in a party with you when we saw the slide in, but I think that's kind of common in all MMOs. You see it from time to time, frozen animations. Like, I remember seeing it in New World quite a lot. I spent plenty of time just kind of skating around in New World. So I won't worry about that too much. The thing that was the most significant for me in terms of performance was when we entered the village at the beginning of the day, things loaded fine instantly. By the end of the day, if I was to go out of the zone and come back into it, like around Big Mama, it would take many seconds to load in. Like, there was times where I'm like, "Where are you guys?" And like, "We're right here. You stood next to us." And it maybe took like 10, 20, 30 seconds to actually load in the players, the buildings, the NPCs, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of a little bit worrying from like a technical point of view, because it kind of tells me that the server is it's getting less performant as the day goes on. So there's probably optimizations that they need to do there. But we've also seen evidence that this was done on an older build of Unity, and there's been newer builds since then, from what I understand. So it's not something I'm overly worried about, but it happened, and that was my thought at the time. But I'd probably say, like, all in all, I don't want to mention any of the cons, because, like, I understand why they wanted to have this in NDA. There was specific things. I think I saw one bug that was potentially like game breaking, which I've mentioned directly to them in the feedback. But they've also acknowledged that a lot of the bugs that have been mentioned they know about, so that's reassuring. Everything else, I'm super happy with the game. I can't find fault in the the general systems in there, the way that the game plays. And as I mentioned earlier, I'd give this game 10 out of 10, and I'm super looking forward to playing it again in the next playtest, which I'm hoping that and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't, but I'm hoping we get all re-invited to help test the game moving forward.
I had the same issue as you also with the Big Mama, that, start of the day, everyone was in the city, late of the day, people were loading in slowly. But once we all were in there and, you waited those seconds, the issue was gone. And it reminds me of the issue that Diablo 4 also has. When you leave the city and you enter the city, you have this weird stuttering loading thing. But yeah. So, Alumio, any cons, pros you want to go with before we wrap this up?
Basically, it's not really. I think I've went over my pros and cons, and I just mentioned some of the issues I had out of just awareness that they did happen, although I did not want to go too hard on them, because for all I know, like I mentioned, it's just a very small, like, local server they had that they ran this in. We don't really know. So we'll see how it goes. Overall, I haven't said a number here, but I did give it a number on my like fun, because they had a form at the end of the playtest, and they had a what was your fun level, like 0 out of 10, and I gave it a 7, I believe. Where I've seen the concepts of their systems and what they intend your game loop to sort of more or less be. I think I'll enjoy it, but with my statement and my fun based on what I tried, there was a lot of tuning that needed to happen still, which, like Blackout said, it could very well just happen already, or we're missing things. I don't know, but if it was like this, 7 out of 10, I would probably play it quite a while. I enjoy the combat when I could fight reliably. If they tweak all this stuff, it just gets better from there, basically.
Yeah. I also filled out that one and had the fun level. I put it on 8 out of 10 because everything in the game I like mechanic wise, combat wise, gameplay wise. But I agree, the things that annoyed me was the same as the regeneration, the drop, those small things which we all agree it's probably fixed for next playtest. If not, they explain why it's not fixed, and it's part of the game. We will see. But I mean, yeah, the next playtest was estimated to be end of October, I believe, which they have said is probably not gonna be with NDA this time. But I think we have to take that with a grain of salt, because I mean, if they still feel like the version is bugged or not ready for public eyes yet, they might throw NDA on it again. But I guess we'll see. So, do we feel happy about everything we covered, or do we feel like we need something?
No, I think without sharing actual like screenshots of it or whatever, I think we've done our best to share our experiences. I mean, for me, this is the first game that's kept me playing for 12 hours straight, and like no other game has done that in the last like 3-4 years. I've never had a gaming session that long, so I mean it was a 10 out of 10 for me for fun. So that's my final review on it.
Yeah.
Luma, you also feel good about what we talked about?
Yeah, I think we've covered everything that we could cover. I unfortunately didn't do the 12 hours because my missus was home, so I did 10. And it was like, oh, I was just gonna spend a little bit of time with her, get some husband points so I don't get in trouble. And then, but I could very much see, even though I give it a 7 out of 10, I could very much see myself playing this long hours constantly, just on the nature that I do enjoy the combat a lot. That's pretty much it. I don't usually give 10 out of 10. So that's probably why I don't touch on to that. But I very much enjoy myself still.
Yeah. I only got to play 4 hours, but that was because all my 3 kids had birthday party that day. So I got to play 1 hour before the guest came and 3 hours after the guest left. So at least 4 hours, I still felt like I saw what I needed to see. But okay, so all happy, everyone ready to go? Cool. Well, Blackout, Alumio, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, for everyone out there listening, watching, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. This was the Daily Loot episode 5, and it was a special Corepunk episode. And stay tuned, because, next episode, hopefully, we'll be able to talk even more about Corepunk and maybe even show something. Peace out. Bye.